My parents told everyone I was a failure. At my brother's engagement dinner, I sat in silence until his fiancée looked at me and asked, "Wait, aren't you the CEO?" Silence fell. Even my father was speechless. The first time my parents called me a failure was in our kitchen on a Sunday morning. I was 25 and had just dropped out of medical school. I sat at the table, trying to explain my decision, but my father, a well-known surgeon, looked at me as if I committed a crime. My mother tried to soften things, but her words cut just as deep. "Son, you're throwing your life away." My younger brother, Tomas, who was 19 and studying law, laughed from the couch. "I always knew you weren't cut out for it," he said, and my parents didn't correct him. From that day on, failure became my shadow. Every family gathering, every call, every comment was a chance to remind me. My father spoke of his hospital achievements with a pride he never showed for me. My mother, with a tone of pity, would ask, "So, Diego, what are you doing now?" "Still chasing your ideas." Tomas was a star son, even though he changed jobs every 6 months like it was a hobby. To them, he was a successful one, and I was the aimless free spirit. At first, their words hurt. I wanted to scream that I wasn't a failure, that I was working on something important. But how do you explain a dream that's barely taking shape? I stayed quiet. I decided I didn't need their approval. I moved to a small apartment in the city, cut contact as much as I could, and started working on my startup. It wasn't easy. The early years were brutal. Sleepless nights, vanishing savings, ideas that didn't pan out. But slowly my company grew. It was an app connecting freelancers with small businesses. Simple but useful. Then came investors, contracts, offices. By 30, my company had hundreds of employees and generated millions annually. I was the CEO. But to my family, I was still the Diego who quit medicine. I didn't tell them anything, not to surprise them, but because I didn't think they cared. When I spoke to them, they'd asked about my little job in a tone that made me want to hang up. So I stopped trying. I went to family gatherings, endured their criticism, and moved on with my life. But Tomas's engagement dinner changed everything. It was a Friday night at an expensive restaurant my parents had reserved. White tablecloths, soft lighting, the kind of place where everything costs a fortune. Tomas was at the center with his smug smile, acting like he owned the place. Next to him was Laura, his fiancée, a woman I barely knew but who had caught my attention. I won't lie. When I met her at a work meeting a month earlier, I found her attractive. She had eyes that seemed to see beyond the obvious, and a calm that contrasted with my brother's arrogance. In that meeting, I was presenting quarterly numbers, and she was in the back taking notes. We didn't talk, but I noticed her looking at me a couple of times. I didn't think much of it then, but seeing her at the dinner, I couldn't help but remember. My parents were beaming, talking about Tomas's bright future and how Laura was the perfect match. As usual, I was in a corner with a glass of water, trying not to stand out. It wasn't new to feel out of place. My parents always found a way to make me feel less. That night, as dinner was served, my father started talking about Tomas's new job at an innovative company. "He's rising fast," he said with a pride he never showed me. Tomas nodded, bragging about transforming the sales team. I smiled to myself. I knew exactly where he worked. My company. I didn't say anything. I ate in silence, ignoring my mother's looks that seemed to say, "Why can't you be like your brother?" The other guests, uncles, cousins, family friends, praised Tomas like he was a genius. Laura, though, was quieter. I caught her looking at me a couple of times, but I thought it was curiosity or pity. My parents had made sure everyone knew I was a family failure. Everything changed during dessert. My father was giving a speech about how Tomas and Laura were the future, when Laura looked straight at me and said, "Wait, aren't you the CEO of the company where Tomas works?" The silence was absolute. Glasses stopped clinking, laughter faded, and all eyes turned to me. Even my father, who was never at a loss for words, stood there with his mouth open. I felt a warmth in my chest, not embarrassment, but something I hadn't felt in years. Control. Laura looked at me with surprise, like she just solved a puzzle. "I saw you at a meeting," she said. ignoring the awkward silence. "You were presenting the quarterly results. You're Diego, right? The CO." The air grew thick. My mother blinked, confused. My father frowned, as if he couldn't process it. But what came next surprised me even more. My mother, eyes gleaming, leaned toward me and said, "So, Diego, how much do you earn?" My father nodded, as if I was suddenly worthy of his attention. "That means the company's yours? How much is it worth?" I froze. After years of treating me like a failure, now they cared about my money, not my work, not my effort, just the numbers. I felt a mix of anger and satisfaction. For the first time, they were at a disadvantage. "Yes," I said firmly, "I'm the CEO of the company where Tomas works." I paused, letting the words sink in. "And Tomas, if you keep showing up late and submitting half-baked reports, I won't hesitate to fire you. I don't care if you're my brother." The table erupted in murmurs. My mother looked at me like I'd crossed a line. My father, red with anger, started talking about family respect, but I wasn't listening. I'd spent years enduring their criticism, their mockery, their disdain. Now it was my turn to set things straight. I'm not one for revenge. I didn't want to humiliate my family or make a scene. But after so long as a target of their comments, I wasn't going to let the opportunity pass. Tomas, with his oversized ego, needed to understand he wasn't untouchable. My parents, who always saw me as a mistake, needed to see they were wrong. And I needed to remind myself I wasn't the failure they thought I was. Laura gave me a small smile, almost like she knew what that moment meant to me. I don't know if it was because she worked in my company or because she was just more observant, but I felt like I had an ally. I stood up from the table. Without saying more, I didn't need to. The guest murmurs filled the air, and my parents were still trying to process what had happened. I left the restaurant, the cool air hitting my face, and stood on the sidewalk, watching the city lights. For the first time in a long time, I felt free, not from my family, but from their words. I'd built something great, something they never imagined, and now they knew. On Monday, back at the office, I prepared for the inevitable. Tomas worked in the sales team, and though he hadn't admitted it at the dinner, his performance was a disaster. He showed up late, submitted incomplete reports, and acted like the job was a favor to the company. Until then, I'd tolerated it because I didn't want to mix family with business. But after the dinner, something changed. I wasn't going to let his attitude jeopardize what I'd built. That morning, I called into my office on the top floor, with glass walls and a city view that reminded me how hard I'd fought to get there. When Tomas walked in, he had that arrogant smile he always used to get his way. "What's up, boss?" he said, his tone trying to be playful but sounding forced. He looked at me like he expected this to be a joke, like my warning at the dinner wasn't serious. "Sit down," I said, pointing to the chair across from my desk. I didn't smile. I didn't want him to think this was a brotherly chat. "We need to talk about your performance." His smile faded. "My performance?" he said. "Come on, Diego, don't give me that. I'm your brother, not some random employee." "That's exactly the problem," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "You're my brother, but you're also an employee, and as an employee, you're failing. You've been here 3 months and haven't closed a single major deal. Your reports are incomplete, you're late almost every day, and when you're here, you spend more time on your phone than working." Tomas crossed his arms, his defiant attitude perfected since we were kids. "This is about the dinner, isn't it? You're mad because Laura recognized you, and I look like the idiot. Now you want to humiliate me." "It's not about humiliating you," I said, though part of me knew it wasn't entirely true. There was satisfaction in seeing him squirm after years of his mockery. "It's about this company not being a game. I built it from scratch, and I won't let anyone, not even my brother, put it at risk. You have 2 options, improve or you're out." He laughed, like he didn't take me seriously. "Out? For real? You're going to fire me? What will Mom and Dad say? You know they'll side with me." "I don't care what they say anymore," I replied, and it was true. For the first time, their opinions didn't weigh as much. "You have 1 week to show results. If not, you're fired." Tomas stormed out, slamming the door. I knew he wouldn't change, and he didn't. The next few days, he kept arriving late, ignored my warnings, and submitted a report so bad it wasn't even worth reviewing. On Friday, I made the decision. I called him back to my office, this time with the HR manager present. I handed him a signed and sealed termination letter. "You're out, Tomas?" I said, not looking him in the eye. "This isn't personal. It's business." He stood there in shock, as if he never expected me to go through with it. "You can't do this to me," he stammered. "I'm your brother. This is betrayal." He tried to appeal to family, our childhood, anything to change my mind, but it didn't work. I'd made my decision, and there was no going back. The news reached my parents before the day was over. My phone started ringing that afternoon, and when I saw my mother's name on the screen, I knew what was coming. I didn't answer. Instead, I got a text. "How could you do this to your brother? Come home now. We need to talk." I didn't want to go, but I knew avoiding it would only make things worse. That night, I drove to my parents' house, the same one where I grew up, where they first called me a failure. When I walked in, my mother was in the living room, arms crossed, eyes red from arguing. My father sat in his armchair, with that judge-like expression he always used to assert his authority. Tomas wasn't there, which was a relief, but also meant my parents would speak for him. "How dare you fire your brother?" my mother started, not even giving me time to sit. "He's your family, Diego. Family comes first. What kind of person does this?" "Someone who runs a company." I replied, trying to stay calm. Tomas wasn't doing his job. I couldn't let it slide just because he's my brother. That's not fair to the other employees. My father scoffed. "Fair?" he said with disdain. "You and your company. You think because you're making money now, you're better than us? Tomas is just starting. He needs time. You can't just throw him out." "I didn't throw him out," I said, feeling anger rise. I gave him a chance. I told him to improve, and he didn't. If I keep him, I'm hurting the company I built. Is that what you want? For me to throw away everything I've worked for just to protect Tomas? My mother stood, pointing at me. "This isn't about your company, Diego. It's about loyalty. We supported you your whole life, and this is how you repay us? By humiliating your brother." That was too much. "Supported me?" I said, raising my voice for the first time. "You spent years calling me a failure. Every time I came here, you made me feel worthless. And now you want to talk about loyalty? Where was your loyalty when you treated me like a mistake?" The silence that followed was heavy. My father opened his mouth to respond, but found no words. My mother, tears in her eyes, just shook her head. "You don't know what it's like to be a parent," she said finally. "Everything we did was to make you better." I didn't reply. What they did was make me the scapegoat. So Tomas could feel better about himself. But that was over. I'm the one setting the rules now. I said. The conversation went nowhere. My parents kept offending Tomas, saying he was young, deserved another chance, that I was being cruel. But I didn't budge. I'd made my decision. When I left that night, I knew the gap between us had grown, but I also felt something new. I didn't need their approval. For the first time, I felt in control. What I didn't expect was that Tomas wouldn't give up so easily. A couple of days later, I got a notification from HR. Tomas had filed a formal complaint, claiming wrongful termination. It didn't surprise me. He was always one for shortcuts, and this was typical. He hired a lawyer, probably some guy he found in a quick online search, and started threatening to sue the company, saying I fired him for personal reasons, abusing my power as CEO. I met with my legal team that week. They reviewed the case and assured me I had nothing to worry about. "His record is a mess," my lawyer Clara said, flipping through documents. Late arrivals, incomplete reports, complaints from co-workers. It's all documented. He has no case. But the situation still bothered me. It wasn't just that my brother was trying to sue me. It was that, even after everything, he still saw himself as the victim. I decided to confront him one last time. I called him and arranged to meet at a cafe near the office. When he arrived, he still had that defiant attitude, like he was in the right. "You can't do this to me, Diego," he said as soon as he sat down. I'm going to fight this to the end. You won't humiliate me. It's not about humiliating you, I replied, tired of repeating myself. It's about you not doing your job. If you want to fight, go ahead, but you won't win. And if you keep going down this path, you'll not only lose the case, but any chance of us being family again. For a moment, I saw something in his eyes, maybe fear, shame, or just exhaustion. But for the first time, he didn't respond with sarcasm. He stayed quiet, staring at his coffee, and after a few minutes, he got up and left without a word. That week was a turning point. Firing Tomas wasn't just a professional decision. It was a statement. I wasn't going to let my family define me anymore. But I also knew this wasn't the end. My parents wouldn't give up easily, and Tomas, though he seemed defeated, wasn't one to quit. And then there was Laura. I couldn't get her out of my head. Her smile at the dinner, the way she looked at me like she saw something others didn't. I didn't know if it was my imagination or if there was something more, but part of me wanted to find out. What came next wouldn't be easy. I'd open a door I couldn't close, and the consequences, good or bad, were coming. But for the first time, I was ready to face them. The weeks after Tomas's firing were a whirlwind. His wrongful termination claim fell apart quickly. My legal team had everything covered. His late arrivals, half-baked reports, co-worker complaints. The lawyer he hired had nothing solid, and a lawsuit died before it reached court. Tomas sent me messages, first furious, then pleading for another chance. I didn't respond. I'd made my decision and wasn't backing down. My parents didn't give up so easily. They kept calling, leaving messages filled with anger and guilt. My mother said I was tearing the family apart. My father called me selfish for putting my company above everyone. But their words didn't touch me anymore. I'd built something bigger than they ever imagined, and I didn't need their approval to know it. The drama spread to the rest of the family. Uncles and cousins took sides. Some supported me for standing firm. Others saw me as the villain. An aunt called to tell me family came first, and I should give Tomas his job back. Family doesn't pay the bills for a company with hundreds of employees, I said before hanging up. Amid it all, Laura became an unexpected presence. Since the engagement dinner, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Her smile, the way she looked at me when I revealed I was the COO, like she saw something others ignored. One day, I got a message from her. "Hi, Diego. Can we talk? It's important." I hesitated. She was my brother's fiancée, or had been, but curiosity won. We met at the cafe where I confronted Tomas. When I arrived, Laura was at a table in the back, holding a coffee. There was something about her calm that disarmed me. "I wanted to apologize for the dinner," she said. "I didn't mean to put you in an awkward spot. I was just surprised your family didn't know who you are." "No need to apologize," I replied. "Thank you for saying it." It was the first time someone at that table really saw me. She smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. "I wanted you to know something," she said after a pause. "I ended things with Tomas. I canceled the engagement a few days ago." I was speechless. "Why?" I asked finally. "The dinner opened my eyes," she explained. "I saw how they treated you, how they took for granted what you've achieved. And then, when you fired Tomas, I saw his reaction. Everything was someone else's fault, never his. I couldn't be with someone like that." I nodded, processing it. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked cautiously. She looked me straight in the eyes. "Because I wanted you to hear it from me, not through rumors. And because I feel like you and I have things in common. We don't fit in the boxes others try to put us in." Her words hit me. It was the first time someone had put into words what I'd always felt. But it also put me on guard. How could I trust someone who changed her mind about my brother so quickly? I didn't say that. Instead, I changed the subject. "Thanks for telling me," I said. "And for the dinner. It meant a lot. If you want to grab another coffee, no family drama, I'm here." She smiled before leaving. "I'd like that." Time passed, and the company kept growing. We closed a deal with an international investor that doubled our value. My employees respected me, and I was proud not just of the company, but of myself. My parents stopped calling, and though it hurt, it was a relief. Tomas found another job, but it didn't last as expected. I didn't gloat. but I wasn't surprised. One morning, as I left a meeting, I saw Tomas waiting in the office parking lot. His face was tense, fists clenched. I knew this wouldn't be a friendly visit. "We need to talk," he said, his tone barely containing his anger. "All right," I replied, staying calm. "I'm here." "You think you can take everything from me?" he spat. "First the job, now Laura? What's next, Diego? You're going to ruin my life completely." I froze. "Laura? I haven't done anything with her. We talked once." "Don't lie," he shouted. "I saw her leave here a few weeks ago. I know you're talking. You think I don't notice? First you humiliate me at the dinner. Then you fire me. And now you're going after my fiancée." "I'm not going after anyone," I said, feeling anger rise. "Laura ended things with you because she didn't want to be with someone who doesn't own their mistakes. That's not on me. And if you want to blame someone for the job, look in the mirror. I didn't do this to humiliate you. I did it because you weren't doing your part." Tomas took a step toward me, and for a second I thought he might hit me. But he stopped, breathing heavily. "You were always the weak one," he said with venom. "The one who gave up on medicine. The one we all thought would amount to nothing. And now what? You think you're better than me because you have money?" "It's not about being better," I replied. "It's about building something while you keep making excuses. If you want to fight for Laura, take it up with her. But don't come blaming me for your choices." He stared at me, eyes full of rage and something else. Maybe defeat. "This isn't over," he said before turning and getting into his car. Days later, Laura texted me again, asking for another coffee. I agreed, though with doubts. We met at the same place, and this time the conversation was different. We talked about simple things, books, movies, plans for the future. For the first time, I felt I could be myself without the weight of my family. But the doubt lingered. Laura had left Tomas so quickly. How could I be sure she wouldn't do the same with me? I didn't bring it up, but I knew if this was going anywhere, I'd have to face it eventually. Looking back, the engagement dinner changed everything. It forced me to see myself as more than the failure my family believed I was. I was Diego, the man who built a company from nothing, who faced his family and came out stronger. And though the path with Laura was just beginning with all its complications, I was ready to see where it led. I'd broken the chains of my past, and that was my true victory.